Thank you, Chairman Smith and Chairman Merkley, members of the Commission and the staff. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. Today, I stand before you to speak about my experience and observations during PRC's Fourth Universal Periodic Review held in Geneva last week. UPRs are intended to for a genuine exchange within the UN framework. This one, however, occurred amid an ongoing Uyghur genocide. It underscored the difficulties in holding China accountable for its human rights atrocities against the Uyghurs, Tibetans, Hong Kongers, Southern Mongolians, and the Chinese dissidents. China's genocidal policies includes forced sterilization, forced abortions, institutionalized mass rape, forced marriages, child abduction, modern-day slavery, organ harvesting, and the crematoria for a culture that doesn't practice cremation. 12 countries and the parliaments, including the United States, recognize these atrocities as genocide. I would like to underline by providing a telling example that the UN system is under immense pressure by the People's Republic of China. The main takeaways of the August 2022 report by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights was that Beijing's actions in the Uyghur region could constitute crimes against humanity. This is a grave allegation that the UN cannot and did not raise without compelling evidence. However, it was disheartening to see that the UN's official compilation of its own reports as a part of the UPR process conspicuously left this conclusion out. As much as Campaign for Uyghurs was relieved to see that this damning conclusion of the report by the UN itself was at least mentioned through our organization in the summary of the civil society reporting produced by UN, the fact that UN is debilitated to the point of not being able to refer to its own reporting without hiding behind a civil society organization shows the level of China's undue pressure under which the UN system currently operates. In the lead up to the UPR session, Campaign for Uyghurs filed with the UN its stakeholder submission, which was referenced extensively in the UN summary of stakeholder submissions, shedding a light on China's atrocities. We seek your permission, Mr. Chairman, to enter this document into the record as well.
Without objection, sir.
Thank you. In Geneva, I witnessed how a totalitarian state aiming to silence dissent and legitimize its oppression worldwide worked to exploit this UN mechanism to receive an international seal of endorsement. I was there last week with my team and my niece Ziba, who attended UPR. It was heartbreaking to see her sitting in the room with the very people that put her innocent mother in jail, continuously whitewash their crimes against humanity. Before the session began, pro-CCP students and the Chinese government-organized NGOs were sent to overcrowd the venue, restricting access to authentic human rights defenders. They attempted to limit civil society participation, and it took our persistent efforts with the UN Secretariat to secure access to the hall that clearly had more available space. Defining the UN rules, pro-China individuals spent hours in the upstairs of the gallery photographing member state delegates and the activists from Uyghur, Tibetan, and the other Chinese dissident groups, including myself. Another pro-China attendee was taking pictures of Tibetan and the Uyghur rights defenders as we were standing in the line to enter the hall. And unfortunately, it took repeated cries from the activists to get the UN security to stop this individual. I saw a pro-Chinese attendee jotting down notes on his phone while looking over at an Uyghur activist's computer. This deliberate surveillance occurred inside the UN, a space meant for secure and open discussion on human rights. There are common tactics used by the CCP to intimidate and monitor human rights advocates in the international forums, especially those dedicated to unveiling the true state of the human rights in China. 163 countries requested to speak. Each was granted just 45 seconds to provide recommendations. Over 120 countries either ignored China's dark record or commended its so-called progress. This included nations that, by their own account, should stand against the repression and not endorse it. It was jarring how sharply this orchestrated praise contradicted the realities of the PRC rule that put marginalized groups under an indefensible persecution. As Representative Salinas noted in her opening remarks, I also want to applaud U.S. Ambassador Michelle Taylor for her resolute stance among the 28 countries which spoke against the human rights atrocities. In just 45 seconds, Ambassador Taylor delivered 8 recommendations on the ongoing Uyghur genocide, violations in Tibet, Hong Kong, Macau, and mainland China. As Chairman Smith mentioned, while the session was underway, China released a white paper on counterterrorism, timed to distort the facts and spread misinformation about the Uyghurs. This move aimed to divert attention from the ongoing genocide and shape a narrative more favorable to China's interests. Despite conclusive research, survivor testimonies, and witness accounts, as well as several leaked documents from the CCP itself, side events organized by the Chinese government and government-sponsored NGOs presented propaganda to cast doubt on the established evidence, which I've discussed further in my written testimony. China's manipulation of the UN and the blatant abuse of the international system undermines the principles of justice, human rights, and fair representation. Their maneuvers compromise the UN's integrity and pose a direct threat to global stability and human dignity. In my opinion, China's calculated attempts were indeed successful in shielding its egregious crimes from scrutiny and eroded the UN's founding principles and its purpose. The international community must unite against such tactics to preserve the UN as a beacon of peace, free from exploitation. Mr. Chairman, what transpired in Geneva last week was not an isolated case, but a symptom of a much larger issue. The PRC's conduct at the UPR and the permissive attitude in that room served as a microscope of China's broader disregard for international norms, human rights, and the dignity of the Uyghurs, Tibetans, Hong Kongers, and other persecuted communities. I am defending human rights at the cost of my own sister's freedom as a result of China's transnational repression against American citizens living in American soil. Exercising my freedom of speech put her in jail. It's clear that in Geneva, the PRC operates with an audacious sense of impunity, treating the UN as if it were their own playground and getting what they want. The United States must recognize the gravity of this situation and the urgency with which it demands a response. It's high time nations stood firm against such a bold effort, ensuring that the UN remains true to the vision of Eleanor Roosevelt rather than becoming a rubber stamp for a global offense on freedom. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. No. You are absolutely right. They define in the books and the Constitution that there are religious beliefs are guaranteed for the citizens. But with this recent campaign of the genocidal policies against the Uyghur ethnic group and the other, the Muslims in East Turkestan, we call Xinjiang province, the Chinese government is criminalizing every single aspect of the religion. Just like praying or fasting during Ramadan, or even saying a simple greeting of Salam Alaikum, which means peace be with you. Those are all the reasons that Uyghurs can be detained. And they are using the pretext of war on terror and the de-radicalization and putting everyone in jail. We have millions of people disappeared in detention. My husband sitting behind me right now, his entire family went missing since summer of 2017, 24 people. My parents-in-laws, 3 of my sister-in-laws, their husbands, brother-in-law and his wife, 14 of his nieces and nephews. Then when I spoke out about this at the Hudson Institute in September 2018, my own sister, a retired medical doctor, Dr. Gulshan Abbas, she was taken as a retaliation for my freedom of speech, as I mentioned in my opening remarks. So when Chen Juanguo, Cui Tiankai, one of the former Chinese ambassadors to United States, when he was questioned by one of the CNN reporters, he said it very clearly when he was asked about those detention centers. He said, by holding those Uyghurs in so-called re-education centers, we are trying to make them normal persons. So imagine, because of the language we speak, the religion we believe, and the beautiful culture that we represent, the front of the Chinese government's eyes, we are not even normal commodities. We are not even normal persons.
Ms. Abbas.
May I have permission to speak, Chairman? In regards to the issue that you mentioned, we have some Uyghur cases around the world. Specifically, we have someone in Morocco, actually, in the last few years, Idris Hassan, in a limbo. And as well as we have some Uyghurs in detention in Thailand. And also recently, there's one more refugee that we spoke to PRO confidentially yesterday. So these are the kind of cases that we need to do something immediately. Our administration, our posts, our embassies should take a step. If previous administration and this administration both declared that what's happening to Uyghurs is genocide, they should not be facing that kind of risk of deporting them back to China. And also on the second related issue, we have a few hundred Uyghurs in the United States. Their political asylum is not even being reviewed, or after the interview, they are not getting the approval. So if we cannot do anything for the millions of Uyghurs back in Uyghur region, at least we should do something for those Uyghurs here and around the world. That's something it's really important and immediate that if we can do something. Thank you.
Let me just